Hi everyone, welcome back to another sewing tutorial. In this tutorial, you'll be learning how to properly draft your basic bodice pattern. I know a lot of you guys already know how to draft this pattern, but this is an updated version of this pattern. So for those that are still having fitting issue with their pattern, like bulky armhole and your zipper not laying flat at the back, this tutorial is all you need. I'll be using the pattern from this tutorial to make a dress for a bride. This is the dress right here, and the fitting of the bodice is amazing. Look at that. She's busty, but the body still fits perfectly. I did not have to do any adjustment. For those that already subscribed to the channel, thank you so much. I appreciate your support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please make sure you go ahead and do so right now. Without wasting much of our time, let's get started. I'll start by marking my vertical measurement, which is my bust point. Then I'll mark my waist, which is 18 inches, and half length for hemming allowance. Then I'll create a straight line like I am doing with all the vertical measurement that I marked. We'll come to the shoulder here and place the shoulder measurement divided by 2 right there. And from that point, I'll go down by 1 inch to create my shoulder slope. Now I'll go to the center front right there and mark my neckline width. I want to use 3.5 inches for this, and I'll mark my 3.5 inches. Then connect to the 1 inch below the shoulder. This is to create your shoulder slope. So after creating your shoulder slope, I'll mark the length of my armhole, and you get that by dividing your bust measurement by 6 plus 1.5, and I have 8 inches. Then I'll connect it straight up to my shoulder measurement. Okay, pay attention to what I'm doing and you understand. So after that, I'll just extend that line out like this. So you'll find the midpoint of your shoulder length. It was 8 inches and the midpoint will be 4 inches right there. And from that midpoint, go in by 3/4 or half of an inch. If you're doing a bigger person, do half of an inch. Now I'll put my bust measurement divided by 4 right here like this, and this is to create my armhole curve. Okay, so I'll connect from the point where I have my bust measurement to the midpoint of my armhole and up to my shoulder like I have right here. So I'll come to this line right here. That was our bust point line, and I'll put my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2 there, and I'll also do that on the waistline. So your nipple to nipple divided by 2, place it on the bust point and on the waistline. I'll connect both points together. Now from the bust point, go down by 1 inch, okay? And this is to create our dart. And on the waistline, I'll be going in by 3/4 of an inch on both sides. You can use half of an inch for a smaller person. I'm using 3/4 of an inch for this client. And then I'll connect those points to the 1 inch below the bust point. Okay, so like I am doing right here, 3/4 of an inch on both sides and connect it to the 1 inch below the bust point. Now I'll come to my armhole area right here. I already placed my bust measurement divided by 4. I'll just add additional 1.5 inches sewing allowance to that. Then I'll come to my waist and measure my waist measurement divided by 4. I'll mark that right there. Add 1.5 inches sewing allowance. Then I'll measure whatever I have as my dart. I'll have 1.5 inches right there, and I'll replace that. Make sure you replace your dart, okay? So you had 1.5 inches. I'll go ahead and connect both points at the side together like this. So after doing that, I'll come back to my shoulder area right there, and to create my neckline, I am making a deep V neckline for this dress. You can do whichever neckline you want. I'll be using 11 inches as the neck depth of this pattern, and from that point at the shoulder, I'll connect it to my 11 inches like I am doing right here. Just pay attention to the way I'm doing this. Now I'll come to the shoulder. I want to do a little bit of adjustment by reducing the width of my shoulder, and the reason is because of the style that I'm trying to make. You do not have to do this if you just need a basic bodice pattern for your dress. The shoulder is perfect this way, but because of the design I'm making, I want to reduce the width of my shoulder to 3 inches. Then I'll add additional half of an inch to hem my neckline, and also half of an inch to attach the sleeve to the armhole area. So that's gonna be 4 inches. 3 inches, half of an inch for the neck, that's 3.5, and half of an inch for the armhole area, and that will be 4 inches. So now you see me marking from my neckline area to the armhole 4 inches like that, and I'll reconnect to create a new armhole. You see that? So from my armhole area to my shoulder, I'll create a new armhole. Just pay attention to the way I'm curving this. It's not a big deal, you understand? So this new line is our new armhole, okay? So that's the new armhole. We are no longer using the previous one. Now I'll add half of an inch to the upper part of my shoulder, and this is for me to join the front and the back bodies together. You know, we'll be joining them together at the shoulder, so I'm adding my half of an inch allowance right here. I'm just extending my neckline into the half of an inch allowance right here. Now I want to create a bust dart for this front pattern, okay? And the reason why I'm doing that is to help me get a nice fit for my back pattern. Now the half length for my front pattern is 18 inches and the half length for my back pattern is 16 inches. And the reason why the front is longer than the back is because we have boobs at the front. So this makes your front half length longer than the back, okay? And the difference between my front and back is gonna be 2 inches. Front is 18, back is 16. So we have 2 inches difference. So I'll be using that 2 inches to create a bust dart for the front, okay? So now from my bust line, you see I already wrote bust line. From that point, I'll go down by 2 inches, which is the difference between my front and back. And from this point, I'll connect it to that 2 inches. So from my dart point right there, I'll connect it by slanting it down to the 2 inches, and I'll have my bust dart right there. So the next thing I'll do is to close this bust dart up by placing this line on top of the second line, okay? Watch what I'll be doing. So I'll fold the first line like this and place that line on top of the other one like this. I've created my bust dart like that. So now you see that after closing it, we have like a boobs or like a curve forming on our pattern. And for us to place this pattern on our fabric to cut, we won't be able to lay this down because it's not flat anymore. So what I'll be doing to make it flat is to open the center part of my dart. You see the part that I'm tracing with my finger? I'll open it up to the bust point. So look at what's gonna happen after I open this up. And now our pattern is flat. So now our dart for the waist is now wider. Okay, you can see that now we have like space in between our darts. That means we've transferred the bust dart to the waist. Guys, I'm not trying to confuse you. This is no big deal. Just pay attention to what I'm doing. So now you see that the side line is kind of crooked now. I'll go ahead and recreate a straight line by connecting these 2 points that I touch. So the armhole and the waist, like I am doing, just reconnect the lines like that and you have a straight line. That's why it's good for you to have a little bit of allowance on the side so you can recreate that straight line. So I'll go ahead and cut off the parts that I don't need from this pattern right here. And I'll also use my marker to highlight the parts that I'll be cutting so you guys don't get confused and cut the wrong line. So watch what I'm doing right here, and I'll cut that line. So I'm cutting through my shoulder, my side right there, and through my armhole like this. So after cutting, this is what we have. Our front bodice is ready and we are ready to move to the back bodice. And this is the other side. So for the back bodice, you are pretty much doing the same thing you did for the front. You mark your bust point, now your half length. You see that I marked 18 inches for my back half length. It's a mistake. It's not supposed to be 18 inches. The back half length is 16 inches. I'll later correct that once I realize before I finish drafting this pattern here. If you also make the same mistake, it's not a big deal. It's easy to fix. Let's continue. Then add half of an inch to the back half length. Create a straight line with the point From the center back, I'll be marking my zipper allowance. So this is the back pattern. We need a zipper allowance at the center back to insert our zipper. So I'm using 1.5 inches for my zipper allowance, and that's the line that I'm creating right there. So after creating my zipper allowance, from that line, I'll be marking my measurement forward, okay, from the line for that zipper allowance. So your shoulder measurement divided by 2, go down by 1 inch like we did for the front. Then you mark the width of your neck, which is 3.5 inches, and you connect that to that 1 inch below your shoulder, okay? Everything you're marking now is starting from that line for the zipper allowance, okay? Make sure you're doing that. So you mark the length of your armhole. We use 8 inches for the front, and I'll connect that straight up to my shoulder measurement. And after doing that, you extend this line out like this. And then I'll place my bust measurement divided by 4 right here at the armhole. Find the midpoint of my armhole, which will be 4 inches. And now for the back pattern, you don't need to come in by 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch, okay? Just connect from your armhole to that point to create your armhole curve, okay? So watch what I am doing right here once I take my ruler out. So you connect it this way. I'll go ahead and add 1.5 inches sewing allowance right here, okay? Then come to your waist, mark your waist measurement divided by 4, add your 1.5 inches sewing allowance. At this point, I realized that I did not create my waist dart. So come to your bust point and mark your nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2. Do the same thing at the waist and connect both points together to create a straight line. And you don't have to go down by 1 inch from the bust point, okay? We only do that for the front. Now you come to your waist and mark 3/4 inch on both sides like we did to create the dart for the front pattern. Just do the same thing for the back, 3/4 inch on both sides, and connect it straight up to your bust point. Guys, just pay attention to what I'm doing right here and you will understand everything. So after connecting it like that, I'll replace my dart. This is important. Always replace your dart. So it's 1 inch, 1.5 rather. I'll put my 1.5 inches dart right there, okay? So I placed my waist measurements divided by 4, starting from my zipper allowance. Then I placed 1.5 inches sewing allowance and 1.5 inches dart allowance. So same thing, bust measurements divided by 4.5 inch sewing allowance. Then I'll connect the side points together. So now that I'm done with that, we are not creating the bust dart for the back pattern. We only created a bust dart for the front pattern, okay? So no front dart for that. So I'll go ahead and reduce my shoulder width. You remember we reduced it to 4 inches for the front. You have to do the same thing for the back, and you recreate your armhole curve, okay? So place your armhole curve ruler like that and reconnect like I am doing right here. Just take your time and place your ruler perfectly. So after reconnecting that, I'll come to my shoulder and add 1/2 inch to join my front and back pattern together at the shoulder, and I'll connect the allowance together like I am doing right here. So now after doing that, I'll go ahead and create my neckline. You can actually do a V neckline for the back, whatever neckline you want, but I'll be doing around a curved neckline, and I don't want it deep, so I'm just doing neck depth of 3 inches for the back, and I'll just go ahead and use my curve ruler to connect it to my neck width, okay? Just pay attention to that. So after doing that, I'll extend my neckline into my zipper allowance like that. So now I'll go ahead and reduce my arm length. I realized my mistake that I used 18 inches and I'm now using 16 inches now, okay? So I marked 16 inches as my arm length right here and 1/2 inch allowance. So I'll connect that together. And that's why I said it's no big deal if you make a mistake and added 18 inches. You can always reduce your measurement at the waist area, okay? So don't freak out if you make mistakes. So I'm just crossing the part that I don't need out like that. Then I'll just come back and kind of remeasure my dart. I just want to make sure everything is perfect. You don't have to do this, but I like to do that, okay? If you don't have 3/4 of an inch on both sides, you can kind of remark your 3/4 of an inch to make sure you have the correct amount of that and reconnect that to your bust line. Okay, I hope I am not confusing you guys. If you have any question, make sure you leave that in the comment section. I'll respond to all your questions. And if you haven't subscribed, please make sure you go ahead and do so right now. Thank you so much. So I'll kind of reconfirm my measurements just to make sure I have the right measurement like I said. So my waist measurement divided by 4 and 1.5 inches sewing allowance, and also 1.5 inches dart allowance, just replacing your dart. And you see I still have the same measurement at the side, so that's why I said it's no big deal as long as you reduce the length at the back. Okay, so now we are done with the drafting. We'll go ahead and cut out this pattern. So I'll be cutting from the right line right there, cut my side, cut the neckline, shoulder, and armhole. So this is what my back pattern looks like. Now after doing that, the next step is to reduce my zipper allowance a little bit at the waist area for the back pattern, and this will help me achieve a flat zipper fitting at the back. So I'm reducing it by 1/2 of an inch right there. You can do 3/4 of an inch, and I'll connect from that point straight up to my neckline area. Okay, so it's like you are trimming 1/2 inch from the waist up to your neckline. You see the way I'm connecting it to the neckline area. And what this will help you do, like I said, is help you achieve a nice flat fit at the back of your dress. Now I'll place both front and back pattern together at the side, and you see how that matches perfectly. So I told you even with the front, that is still gonna match perfectly. So that means everything is okay with our pattern. So this is me placing my pattern on my fabric to cut the front out, and this is the dress that I used that pattern to make. Like I said from the beginning, it is so pretty. The link to the full tutorial on how I made this dress will be in the description. You don't want to miss it, so go and watch that tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial and learned something interesting from it. If so, don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up, like and share with your friends that are into sewing. I'll see you guys in my next tutorial. Bye.